Good morning. Hey, this is your host, Jeff Ski Kinsey. Of course, it's morning somewhere, right? Hey, I want to talk about time. This is actually part 2 for our podcast, trying to explain how I approach this construct we know as time. And I say it's non-linear. And here's why I say that. Let's say you're trying to accomplish something. Let's say you're trying to learn how to program. Let's say you're trying to build a Shopify site. Trying to learn how to build a Shopify site. Okay? So they got tons of videos to do that. So you can start with a free account. Actually, I think it's $1 a month for the first 3 months. Okay? So what I would do if I were trying to learn this for the first time is I'd gather some data, what some might call front loading. Okay? What is it I'm trying to sell on Shopify, an e-commerce site? Okay? What is it that I have to sell? We might call them products. Okay? Maybe it's goods and services. Maybe it's consulting. Okay? So I'd lay this out, and often I use my Apple Pencil, which when it was announced, I thought was the dumbest thing in the world. But if you have an iPad, it's really a handy tool. And so I use a program called Bamboo, which lets me draw on the screen. And it will generate PDFs of whatever I draw, which is kind of cool. So I would lay out a grid and say, okay, here's some of the things I want to accomplish. And then I would guess at what kind of time it would take to do that. Now here's the secret sauce, if you will. Okay, let's say there's a component you look at and say, well, I want to add this, and I think it should take an hour. Okay, maybe you even want to do kind of like here's what I think it'll take, the estimate, and here's maybe the range or maybe a max. So let's say you think it's going to take an hour. You say, but worst case scenario, it might take 2. Okay, with me so far? So let's say just to add, to point your domain to your Shopify cart, you set aside an hour. 2 hours worst case scenario. So you go in there and you try doing that. You maybe watch some videos. You maybe search YouTube. And for whatever reason, it's not connecting. It's like, okay, what is that? Okay. So in this construct known as time, you can look at it and say, well, I'm going to spend this amount of time and achieve results, success. But what if you don't? Okay. Here's where you need a force multiplier, right? So there are all kinds of services and experts and gurus and mavens you can reach out to and say, hey, I'm stuck. Okay? So now you can continue to burn hours that you need for other components, or you can hire it done. Okay? So I had an Italian tailor as a partner in one of my business ventures, a tuxedo rental franchise. I worked for it for a year, then I bought it. We partnered, the tailor and I. And he said, look, the secret to business is to do as little as possible. And he said, that little, get somebody else to do. Brilliant. So, hire it done. Okay, you need it done. You're burning hours you don't have to spare. Okay, this is where focus comes in. Okay, I'm going to focus on doing something, laser focus until I get stuck or roadblocked. Does that make some sense? So, it might only take 3 hours total, 2 of yours with no success. You could quit, walk away, or you can say, well, I'm going to hire somebody else to do it and pay them money because they know that piece of it, and it gets done in 3 hours. But that last hour, here's why I say time's non-linear. That last hour is not chewing up your time. It's on somebody else's clock. Now you can take that hour while they're working and you can work on something else. Okay? Money and time aren't always interchangeable, but hopefully this helps understand that time, we need a different vantage point. Again, if we're trying to get stuff done, as I mentioned in part 1 of this, I was talking to someone who has a startup, and I was asking them how are they spending their time. Okay, so we have to be smart about it, and let's frame it. Some people like time boxes. I don't necessarily think that term doesn't resonate with me like it might with you. But if you think, hey, I'm going to time box this thing, great. Okay, I look at it. One of my mentors, Mike Murdoch, said, look, we each get 24 golden boxcars every day. We each get 24 hours. We decide what to fill them up with, okay? And if you think linearly in a line, okay, you got one, and then the next hour, then the next hour, then the next hour. Or you can think, hey, I could take an hour and I might have 27 tasks to get accomplished. It could take me 27 hours, or I could find 26 other people to do it. And you might spend just 1 hour farming those parts out to 26 other people. And boom, guess what? You're done in 2 hours. One to plan it, reach out, engage the others, maybe Fiverr, maybe Upwork, maybe LinkedIn, wherever. Okay, so that's why I say it's non-linear. You just accomplished something that should have taken 27 hours in just 2, or maybe 4. And while they're working, okay, you've spent your hour, you've got it up and running. Okay, your second hour, you're doing something entirely different, but you're going to get credit for what they accomplish. And let's say 1 or 2 or 5 of them come back and say, hey, this isn't working. Okay, I might spend another hour replacing them. Okay, this is where one of my heroes, Grant Cardone, comes in with this concept known as the 10X rule. Okay, he said, figure out what it is you're trying to accomplish, figure out some kind of timeline, a construct of time. And he says, okay, here's what you're going to get done. Here's what you think you need to get done. And he said, now apply 10 times the amount of effort you think is necessary to make that happen. Because stuff happens. Roadblocks appear. You've got to figure out how to go through them, around them, over them, under them. Okay? But you have to apply 10 times the amount of effort you think it'll take to achieve something. But it doesn't have to be your 10 hours. Is this helping? Reach out.